At the slave market, a group of slaves are led onto the stage like cattle, to be selected by slave masters. Nowadays, Betrayal is so rich that he buys all the slaves for $50. His purpose is to train them into gladiators, sending them into the arena to fight to the death against beasts or each other. On this particular day, Ilithia, the wife of General Glaber, visits the training ground to please Ilithia and to smooth her husband's career path. Lucretia suggests that Ilithia personally select a slave as her pet. For a nominal fee to cover training and living expenses, the gladiator will belong to Ilithia. It would be a great honor for the master if the newcomer made a name for himself in the arena. Ilithia is thrilled, but she doesn't know which novice has the most potential.
Doctore! Our honored guest wishes to assess the recruits for TUS.
Remove your cloths!
Ultimately, on Betrayal's recommendation, Ilithia chooses Segavax. Now having her own gladiator, Ilithia frequently visits the training ground to observe Segavax's progress. Betrayal's skill in selecting fighters is unmatched. Among all the novices, Segavax grows the fastest and is the most formidable. Ilithia can barely contain her excitement. Eager to show off to her high society friends, Lucretia readily agrees, seeing it as an opportunity to meet more influential people to pave the way for her husband. Soon, Ilithia and several noblewomen arrive at the mansion. However, the conversation among the noblewomen is like a war without smoke, filled with sharp and cutting words, as they belittle Ilithia's gladiator for not having fought in the arena yet. They prefer Spartacus, now the champion of Capua. Under their unanimous request, Lucretia has Spartacus brought over for their enjoyment. Ilithia detests Spartacus the most, as he is her husband Glaber's enemy. Facing Ilithia's humiliation, Spartacus can no longer suppress his anger, remembering how Glaber indirectly caused his wife's death.
Left them to be raped and murdered.
Get him out of here.
What a bold tongue.
Apologies.
Were he my slave, I would have him crucified.
Spartacus's retaliation embarrasses Ilithia in front of the noblewomen, as no slave had ever spoken to her like that. After the noblewomen leave, a plan for revenge begins to form in Ilithia's mind. Ilithia approaches her gladiator, Segavax. She tempts him with the promise of freedom once the deed is done, instructing him to find an opportunity to assassinate Spartacus. Meanwhile, the former champion of Capua, Crixus, had finally regained his life under the care of a physician, but the arena has changed. Spartacus has completely taken his place. That afternoon, the physician hands Betrayal a list of medicines to purchase for Crixus's treatment. Despite the heavy expenses, Betrayal reluctantly sends a slave named Ashur to buy the medicine. Ashur was once a gladiator himself. Because Ashur was injured in battle and his legs were not flexible, Betrayal used him to run errands and other errands. Ashur, having been bullied by Crixus in the past, saw an opportunity for revenge. He suggested to Betrayal that they should sell Crixus, arguing that Crixus's treatment was expensive and might not restore him to his former glory. Betrayal was initially hesitant, but Ashur continued to stir the pot, suggesting that Spartacus and Crixus never got along. If Crixus lost his mind, he might kill Spartacus, resulting in a significant loss. It was at this moment that Betrayal began to seriously consider selling Crixus. Lucretia and Naevia, overhearing the conversation, were concerned. Lucretia, for whom Crixus was a lover, tried to intervene but to no avail. Distressed, Naevia quickly went to Crixus, urging him to prove his worth to his master. Watching Spartacus training, Crixus, ignoring his injuries, challenged him. However, Spartacus, hardened by countless life and death battles in the arena, easily overpowered Crixus within a few rounds. The unfortunate Crixus was carried into the room. Crixus had intended to prove his worth, but this only made Betrayal more determined to sell him. But on the afternoon of the day Crixus was to be sold, an event dramatically altered his fate. Spartacus, sitting in the bathhouse, lost in thoughts of his deceased wife, was suddenly attacked from behind with a rope around his neck. At the brink of death, Crixus appeared just in time to save Spartacus, fighting desperately for his life.
I did not save Spartacus. I saved a brother.
Crixus's disdain for Spartacus stemmed from his perception that Spartacus lacked a sense of belonging to the gladiators. Upon learning of this, Betrayal was furious. He also recognized Crixus's value, his unwavering loyalty. Consequently, Betrayal abandoned the idea of selling Crixus. Although Betrayal was aware that Ilithyia had orchestrated the scheme, he refrained from pointing it out directly due to her husband being Glaber. As a form of punishment and to set an example, Betrayal ordered Segavax to be crucified.
I will regain my position, champion. I welcome the attempt.
Spartacus is hailed by many as the ultimate TV series because it fulfills the most primal desires of man, and today's masked orgy is one of the most iconic and unforgettable scenes from the first season. In the slave mansion, where gladiators are trained, Lucretia arranges a line of women wearing various masks for Liciniia to choose from. Eventually, Liciniia selects a mask worn by a slave named Mira. Ever since catching a glimpse of Spartacus, Liciniia has been infatuated with him, so she sneaks into the mansion, hoping for a soulful encounter with Spartacus. Lucretia, discerning Licinia's intentions, promptly informs her of the rules of the masked carnivali: arrive alone in a week, at a precise time, and without any attendants, to conceal her identity to the utmost. Liciniia must not remove her mask during the encounter and must remain silent. Liciniia readily agrees to Lucretia's terms. However, while they are in the midst of their secret discussion, Ilithyia suddenly bursts in. After a brief exchange of barbs with Liciniia, who she has a history with, Liciniia quickly departs. Noticing the mask in Licinia's hand, Ilithyia realizes that something is being kept from her. After some probing, Lucretia slips up and reveals the secret.
I would suspect intent to fuck one of your gladiators.
Ilithyia. She is, isn't she? Oh, that little whore. How positively depraved.
I promise discretion. You must not breathe a word of this to anyone.
I would never think it.
Ilithyia, while outwardly agreeing with Lucretia, is plotting her own scheme. Soon after, Lucretia communicates Licinia's request to Betrayal. Betrayal is overjoyed, as Licinia's cousin is one of Rome's wealthiest men, and gaining his favor could pave the way for his own career. Lucretia, however, is worried. Spartacus is notoriously defiant and making him serve might be challenging, but Betrayal is confident, as Spartacus has become surprisingly compliant. Indeed, when Spartacus is informed, he does not refuse. He seems to have embraced the gladiator ethos: respect and obey the master. If the gods have made him the champion of Capua, he reasons, he should do everything a champion is expected to do. Even so, Lucretia remains uncertain. Spartacus hadn't touched a woman in months since Sura's death, and Lucretia feared that his virility was no longer fleeting. Planning to reacquaint Spartacus with the touch of a woman, Lucretia sets her sights on the new female slave, Mira. That evening, upon returning to his room, Spartacus found a woman lying in his bed, but Spartacus, whose heart held only memories of his deceased wife, promptly drove Mira out without a word. The next day, when Lucretia asked about the outcome of the practice, a terrified Mira had no choice but to truthfully reveal what had happened. Upon hearing this, Lucretia flew into a rage. She ordered Mira to try again that night, and if she failed, to commit suicide on the spot as an apology. Meanwhile, the former champion Crixus finally recovered and returned to the training ground. Seeing him in his former glory brought a smile to Lucretia's face.
Has there ever been such a man as Crixus?
No, Domina. There has not.
Praise the gods for his return,
May they guide him to many more victories.
and our purse filled by such.
Yes, filled to bursting.
That afternoon, Ilithyia returned to the mansion, revealing her true desire. She too wanted to experience the masked carnivali and wished to be with Crixus. Despite guessing the relationship between Lucretia and Crixus, Ilithyia claimed she didn't mind. This unreasonable request infuriated Lucretia. Crixus was her man. How could she possibly hand him over? Betrayal was surprised by his wife's reaction to Ilithyia choosing Crixus. Unaware of his wife's secret liaison with the slave, oblivious Betrayal advised Lucretia to comply with Ilithia's request. As his ambitions relied on the support of Glaber, Ilithia's husband, Licinia's cousin is unrivaled in wealth, but he is not a member of the Senate. And if a gladiator is all it takes to win the favor of the powerful, why not? Unbeknownst to Betrayal, an enraged Lucretia was brewing a venomous plan of revenge. That night, Spartacus was awakened by an unexpected touch.
Please, don't upset me.
Return the way you came.
What do you think will happen if I fail such command?
On the floor.
Mira had returned to his room. Finally, the day of the masked carnivale arrived. Before entering, Lucretia repeatedly reminded Spartacus not to remove his mask and to remain silent throughout. In the arena, he might be the champion of Capua, but tonight he was just an obedient slave. After preparing and donning their masks, the pair eagerly engaged in a passionate encounter. However, half an hour later, Lucretia burst in, panicked, claiming a mistake. Followed by Licenia, they were thrown into disarray, and upon removing each other's masks, they discovered they had been with their most incompatible enemies. An angry Spartacus was led away, unaware that all this was orchestrated by Lucretia.
Would this not set every tongue in Rome wagging? The wife of Legatus Claudius Glaber. Fucking Spartacus, the man that nearly ruined him.
It is a scandal, is it not?
Licinia's mocking laughter thoroughly infuriated Ilithia, making her feel as if she was stripped naked and ridiculed by the entire world. In a fit of shame and rage, Lucretia violently smashed Licinia's head against the floor. Licinia's death in the mansion was a massive crisis, and it was something Lucretia had never anticipated. She only intended to teach Ilithia a lesson, not cause such a fatal outcome. Fortunately, Licinia had come alone, and no one knew of her whereabouts. After discussing, the couple decided to dispose of Licinia's body, simultaneously indebting Ilithia to them. Lucretia promised to forever keep the secret of Licinia's murder for Ilithia. From that moment, the fate of the always arrogant Ilithia was firmly in Lucretia's hands.